Story 1. I didn't know what it meant to truly be afraid until the night I stared down the barrel of a gun on the other side of a glass door, in a place where people came and went like ghosts. That night, in a half-dead hotel off the back roads of Flagstaff, Arizona, something in me cracked, and maybe something else woke up. It was the winter of 1993. I was 19, just out of high school and barely scraping by. I'd grown up 2 towns over in Winslow. My parents didn't have much. My dad worked on cars and drank too much. My mom waitressed at a diner that changed names 3 times before it shut down. College wasn't even a thought. Hell, we could barely keep the lights on. So when I finished high school, I did what felt like the next right thing. I took the first full-time job I could find. That job was night auditor at the Red Pine Inn. Red Pine was the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked while driving past it on Route 66. A faded L-shaped building with mustard yellow siding and rusty steel staircases. 2 stories officially, but there was a 3rd floor. Management told me never to put anyone up there. It's storage, Oin, they said. But when I asked what exactly was stored up there, nobody ever gave a straight answer. I started in September, and by December I was working the graveyard shift 5 nights a week. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I didn't mind it much. It was quiet, mostly. I checked in late arrivals, made coffee for the early risers, logged the books, ran account summaries, cleaned the lobby when no one was looking. Lonely work, but honest. And for a broke 19-year-old, it felt like responsibility. But then came January 17th, a Monday, dead cold. Snowed that afternoon, and everything had frozen over into a sheet of glass by the time I clocked in. By midnight, we had only 2 rooms booked, both on the 1st floor. The rest of the place sat silent. Empty rooms, unlit hallways, and that eerie humming from the old fluorescent fixtures in the lobby. I remember the desk phone hadn't rung once all night. I was halfway through a room check when I saw him. The hotel had these old black and white security monitors stacked in a bay behind the front desk. No sound, just grainy loops from 6 cameras. The parking lot, the front lobby, the hallway corners, the stairwells, and one watching the 3rd floor, though that one barely worked. I was scribbling in the account book when something flickered in the corner of the screen. Camera 1, lot view. There was a man standing just beyond the awning, under the only dead lamp in the lot. He wasn't moving, just standing. His head was down, black coat, black gloves. Something about him didn't feel like a guest. My stomach tightened the way it does when you're in the dark and you realize something else is in there with you. I leaned forward. The camera zoom wasn't great, but enough to see him glance around before pulling something from his coat pocket. A ski mask. My breath caught. It was almost comical for a second, like something out of a bad movie, until he pulled the mask over his face and started walking toward the lobby doors. I jumped from my chair so fast I knocked over my coffee. The mug hit the desk and shattered, but I didn't stop to look. I bolted around the corner and ran to the front doors. They were automatic, sensor-based, but I knew they could be locked manually with a deadbolt just beneath the welcome mat. I was sliding the bolt into place when I saw him charging toward the glass. He was fast, faster than I expected, but I beat him by seconds. The doors clicked shut just as he grabbed the handle and yanked. Nothing. We stared at each other, maybe 3 feet apart, separated by an inch of reinforced glass. His mask had a single hole for the mouth. He didn't speak, just sneered. And then he pulled the gun. It was small, black, maybe a .38. He raised it slowly, deliberately, like he wanted me to feel every inch of fear. And I did. I froze. Every part of me. Couldn't move. Couldn't even blink. He pulled back the hammer with a click so loud I swear I heard it even through the glass. He raised it to my eye level. I felt warm wetness between my legs. He pointed the gun right at me and click. Nothing. He didn't fire. He didn't bang the door. He didn't yell. He just stared and then turned and walked away into the night. I don't remember how long I sat on the floor after that. My legs had given out. I was curled up next to the heater behind the front desk, shaking like a dog in a thunderstorm. When I could finally move again, I stumbled to the staff bathroom and stripped out of my soaked jeans. The staff locker had an extra pair of housekeeper pants. Didn't fit, but I didn't care. I called the police, hands still shaking. They came an hour later, but by then, the man was gone. No fingerprints, no car description, just security footage they said they'd review thoroughly, but I never heard back. My manager showed up around 6:45 a.m. "Why'd you call the cops?" he asked, looking more annoyed than worried. I told him everything, even the part about pissing myself. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "You're lucky the door was locked." Then he handed me a form to sign for the police report, and that was it. No extra security, no therapist, no apology, just clock out and go home. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, or rather, the black hole where his mouth should have been, the sneer, the click. That Friday, I quit. I left a handwritten note. This job is not worth dying for. 2 weeks later, I enrolled in community college. It wasn't the trauma that convinced me. It was the moment after. When I sat there on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, realizing that if I'd died, I'd have done nothing with my life. That scared me more than the gun. It's been over 30 years now. I finished college, transferred to Arizona State, earned my MBA, and started a consulting business in Scottsdale. I got married, had a son, built something, built me. And yet sometimes when I'm alone in my office at night, I still hear the click. I still remember the way that man looked at me, not like a person, like a thing in his way. And I wonder what would have happened if he pulled the trigger. Would the gun have fired? Would I have died on the cold tile floor of a lobby that smelled like lemon cleaner and mildew? Would anyone have come looking for me? Or would I have just become another rumor told by hotel staff about why no one books rooms on the third floor? Because here's the thing I never told anyone. That night, just before I saw him on the monitor, I'd heard a noise, a door. From the third floor, a heavy creak. I'd dismissed it, assumed it was a settling pipe or a frozen window frame. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe he'd been in the hotel the whole time. Maybe the third floor isn't storage at all. Story 2. I didn't expect the research trip to go sideways until it did. Fast, sharp, and without warning. I was 34 then, working as a freelance writer with a modest but loyal readership that followed my in-depth historical features. My home base was Erie, Pennsylvania, a town nestled along the lake, large enough to matter but quiet enough that you could disappear if you wanted to. I lived alone in a drafty upstairs apartment over a bakery, a place that always smelled like cinnamon and sugar, even in the dead of January. The project that had me driving through the South that spring was a historical novel set during the final year of the Civil War. I'd been working on it in pieces for over a year, but something felt missing. I needed the texture, the local language, the smells of the land, the weight of silence in a town that still hadn't healed. Online archives could only get you so far, so I planned a solo research trip. 2 weeks through Georgia, with stops in Augusta, Savannah, and Macon. Small towns, city records, local libraries, anything that gave me insight into what it really felt like to live in that time and place. By the time I reached Macon, I was exhausted. My rental car smelled like takeout and old coffee. My back ached from long hours in dusty archives. I was supposed to be there for 2 days to visit the Monroe County Records Office and a historic cemetery that still had Union soldier headstones standing upright under layers of Spanish moss. But I only made it one night. That night, I checked into the Bradford Inn just off the main highway. A squat, aging building with beige stucco walls and a faded red sign barely lit by flickering neon. From the outside, it looked like it had once been part of a motel chain, but had since fallen into independent ownership, which meant fewer rules and cheaper rates. I was too tired to be picky. It had a lock, a bed, and half-decent reviews online. That was all I needed. At the front desk, a man named Gerald checked me in. He had the drawn-out, polite drawl of a lifelong Southerner and the yellow fingertips of a smoker. He seemed harmless enough, though something in his eyes lingered too long on my face as he handed me the keycard. "Room 209, he said, tapping the worn laminate map of the second floor. "End of the hall. It's quiet over there." I thanked him, grabbed my bags, and climbed the concrete stairs, noting how eerily empty the parking lot was. Maybe 3 other cars in the whole place. I didn't mind. Quiet was what I needed. Room 209 was exactly what you'd expect from a $60 a night motel. Off-white walls stained with age, a brownish carpet that had seen too many shoes, a queen-size bed with stiff sheets and a cigarette burn on the comforter. There was an old TV bolted to the dresser, a microwave that smelled like popcorn grease, and a loud groaning air conditioner near the window. I didn't care. I showered, changed into an oversized t-shirt, and got into bed. I left the lamp on. Not because I was scared, just because the overhead lights made the place feel colder. At some point, I drifted off, and that's when the noises started. It was subtle at first, a faint tapping, then a heavier knock, a pause, then a dull dragging sound like furniture being scraped across the floor. I sat up, heart thudding, checked the clock. 12:42 a.m. The sound was coming from the room next to mine, room 211. I got up and tiptoed to the wall, placing my ear against the cool plaster. A low shuffling noise. Then, nothing. Dead silence. I waited. Then came 3 knocks. Slow, intentional. Then another dragging sound. Something heavy being pulled. I stepped away from the wall, breathing slowly. It was probably someone rearranging luggage, or drunk, or both. I turned the TV on for background noise and climbed back into bed. 20 minutes later, the noise returned. This time louder and stranger. The dragging was closer, then a soft, rhythmic tapping on the shared wall, like fingernails. I muted the TV. The tapping stopped. The silence stretched out for a full minute. And then, click. The doorknob on the adjoining room door, between 209 and 2011, twitched. My blood ran cold. I had locked my side of the door, of course, but it wasn't just the turn. It was the testing. A slow, deliberate jiggle, like someone gently checking to see if they could come in. I held my breath, backing away. The air felt charged, electric, like static before a storm. I turned the lamp up to full brightness and stood there, clutching my phone. And then, nothing. No sound. No more movement. I stayed awake until 3 a.m. Finally, I drifted off, light still on. When I woke at sunrise, something was off. My suitcase was zipped, but I'd left it open. The chair at the desk had moved. It now faced the bed. And the lamp was off. I sat there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I could feel that something had been in the room. I hadn't heard the door open, but somehow I knew. I packed up quickly, throwing everything into my bag with shaking hands. I didn't even stop to brush my teeth. When I returned the key card to the front desk, Gerald gave me a long look. "Everything all right?" he asked. I hesitated. "The room next to mine, 211. Someone was in there last night, making noise, trying the door." He blinked slowly. "There ain't been no guest in 211 for months," he said. "That room's gutted. Floorboards pulled up for repair. There's no furniture in there." I stared at him, waiting for a sign that he was joking. He wasn't. "What about a staff member?" I asked. "Maintenance? Cleaning crew?" He shook his head. "Only me here after 8. Haven't had anyone go in there. You sure it wasn't a dream?" I opened my mouth to respond but stopped. He was watching me too closely now, measuring my reaction. I left without another word. I booked a room at a Marriott 2 towns over, spent the rest of the day sitting at a diner, nursing sweet tea and replaying everything in my head. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for Bradford Inn, Macon, Georgia, and variations of the address. Most hits were just booking sites, but buried in a local newspaper archive was a story from 2018. Authorities are investigating the death of a 27-year-old woman found in the closet of room 209 at the Bradford Inn late Tuesday night. Police were called to the scene after a guest in room 211 reported strange noises through the shared wall. No foul play is suspected, though the medical examiner has not released an official cause of death. The woman, who was traveling alone from out of state, had reportedly been staying at the motel for 2 days prior. I froze. The next night, I watched the video I'd taken on my phone during the incident. Just a few seconds, pointed at the door. Nothing. Then, just at the edge of the frame, a flicker, a shadow, a breath, and the doorknob twitching. I've shown it to people. Most shrug it off. Some think it's a prank. Others tell me it was a dream. But I know what I felt. I know someone or something was in room 211. And maybe, just maybe, it came through. I never finished the novel. But if I ever do, the first chapter will begin in a motel room on the edge of Macon, Georgia, with a woman who came south chasing ghosts from the past and left running from one that still hadn't gone. Story 3, I never wanted to go to that reunion. My mom had been nagging me for weeks, saying I needed to get out of my shell, which was her polite way of telling me I had no social life. I was 15, moody, awkward, and still nursing a heartbreak from a boy who didn't even know I liked him. The reunion was being held at a hotel in Austin, Texas, and despite my protests, my parents booked my flight from Milwaukee. My dad couldn't make it, and Mom was staying behind with my little brother, so they figured sending me alone would be a good experience. The Ridgemont Hotel wasn't fancy, but it had palm trees, a rooftop pool, and those small bottles of shampoo I always loved as a kid. My uncle, Aunt Linda, and 3 cousins were already there when I arrived. I barely remembered the girls, Sierra, Jasmine, and Ava, but my mom always said we looked like sisters. It was true. Same long blonde hair, blue eyes, high cheekbones. Uncle Mike had splurged on the bridal suite for the 4 of us. It was massive. 2 queen beds, a pull-out couch, a minibar we weren't supposed to touch, and a balcony that overlooked the parking lot. On the first night, we joked that I was getting married and this was my bachelorette party. Ava, the youngest at 14, insisted we call her the maid of honor. Jasmine, 16, was sarcastic and dramatic. Sierra, 17, practically ran the show. I liked them immediately. That night, we stayed up until nearly 3 a.m., watching TikToks, painting our nails, and whispering about boys. For once, I didn't feel like the quiet one. I felt like I belonged. The next few days were a blur of sun, selfies, and harmless flirting. We tanned at the pool, ordered ridiculous amounts of room service, and made up fake identities. "Let's say we're from California," Jasmine said one afternoon, "and we're backup dancers for Olivia Rodrigo." "No one's going to believe that," I laughed. "You don't know that," Ava grinned. "Confidence is everything." Sierra raised an eyebrow. "Let's just go with the bachelorette thing. It's more believable." By the 3rd night, we'd attracted a lot of attention, mostly from older guys. It was harmless at first. They'd wave or say hi by the pool, maybe offer to buy us drinks before realizing we weren't old enough. But then we met Ty and Brandon. They were sitting in the hotel bar when we walked through after dinner. Brandon had tattoos on his arms, and Ty wore a backward cap. Both looked to be in their late 20s. They smiled when they saw us. "Bachelorette party?" Brandon asked. "Yup," Sierra said, popping the P. "This one's getting married next week." She pointed to me. I tried to laugh it off, but I could feel Ty staring. His eyes lingered too long. They asked us to sit. We did. They asked our names. We gave fake ones. They asked if we were drinking. Ava lied and said we already had shots upstairs. After 20 minutes, they invited us up to their room just to hang. "No," I said firmly. "We've got family in the rooms next to ours. They'd kill us." The mood shifted. Brandon leaned back, his smile faltering. Ty looked at me again. There was something unreadable in his face. "All right," he said slowly. "Maybe tomorrow then." Sierra smiled and pulled me up by the hand. "Maybe." We left them sitting there. That night, around 2:30 a.m., we were finally falling asleep when we heard it. Click, click, click. The door handle. Someone was trying to open our suite. I froze. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it, but then I saw Sierra's eyes wide open across the room. "You heard that?" I whispered. "Yeah." It rattled again, this time more aggressively. "What the hell?" Jasmine whispered, pulling the blanket up. Before any of us could stop her, Ava, who was always the boldest, jumped out of bed. "Maybe it's Dad," she said and marched toward the door. "Ava, wait!" I hissed. She ignored me and swung the door open. "No one's—" She started, then gasped. A man in black, hooded, masked, tall, lunged from the hallway and grabbed her by the arm. She screamed, a sound I'll never forget. We all jumped up and ran to the door. He was dragging her fast toward the elevator. Ava was kicking and flailing, but he was strong. "Let me go!" she screamed. "Ava!" Jasmine shrieked. The hall was chaos. I was frozen for half a second until I heard Uncle Mike's door slam open. He came running in his boxers, and when he saw Ava being dragged away, he charged. "Hey!" he yelled and slammed into the man, tackling him hard. Ava dropped to the floor. The guy shoved Uncle Mike back, then ran down the stairs, disappearing into the lower floors. Hotel security arrived 10 minutes too late. Ava was hysterical. Jasmine couldn't stop shaking. Sierra sat silently, her face pale, arms wrapped around her knees. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the door. The police arrived an hour later. They took statements, asked questions, tried to calm Ava down. We told them about Ty and Brandon, the flirting, the fake names, the bachelorette story. They looked pissed. Young women who look alike, staying alone in a bridal suite, claiming to be adults? One officer muttered, "You were targets the moment you walked into that bar." They checked the cameras, but the man wore a hoodie and a mask. The footage showed him entering the side door around 2 a.m. He'd taken the stairwell, avoided all main cameras. Whoever he was, he'd planned it. The officers suspected it was a trafficking attempt. Ava was small, pretty and loud, the kind of girl a predator might pick. They guessed he tried the door, hoping anyone would open it. And she had. I flew home the next morning. I didn't even tell my mom everything, just that someone tried to break into our room. But I didn't sleep for weeks. Every sound at night made my heart race. I stopped talking to strangers. I couldn't be in a hotel for over a year. Ava started therapy. Sierra deleted all her social media. Jasmine wouldn't go near a hotel elevator. And Ty and Brandon? They were never found. Fake names, fake room numbers. Hotel registry said they checked out that morning. But I think about them. When I'm at the airport, when I'm in a restaurant, when I see a man glance too long in my direction, I wonder if they remember us, if they're still out there, if they found someone else. Sometimes when I pass a hotel lobby, I hear the rattle of a doorknob in my head, and I remember, it could have been me. Story 4. I've never liked telling this story, not because I'm afraid people won't believe me, but because part of me hopes it wasn't real. But I know it was. It happened 10 years ago when I was 15. Now at 25, I've told maybe 2 people the full version. Not because I wanted to, just because I needed someone else to help carry the weight of it. It took place during one of those awkwardly planned family trips. You know, the kind where no one really wants to go, but everyone pretends they do for the sake of making memories. My parents had this plan to drive through some of the Pacific Northwest, stopping at a few scenic towns along the way. One of those stops was in a little place called Pine View, Idaho, a speck on the map surrounded by thick forest, a cold lake, and not much else. We pulled in late afternoon, after a long day of cramped silence and cheap gas station snacks. I remember the sun was dipping behind the treetops when we turned into the parking lot of the Pine View Inn, an aging 3-story building tucked off Highway 21, the kind of place with wooden balconies, creaky ice machines, and faded lawn chairs out front like someone expected the guests to actually sit there. My mom checked us in. The old woman at the desk gave us 2 keys, real ones, not cards, attached to big plastic tags with peeling room numbers printed on them. "Your parents will be in 211, she said, handing one to my mom, "and you boys get 209, right next door." Perfect, I thought. My brother Matt and I had recently reached the age where we were finally trusted enough to get our own room. I was 15, he was 17. That summer, I just finished freshman year. Matt was 2 grades ahead and already acting like he ruled the world. Truth was, we barely spoke back then, unless it was to argue over who got the last slice of pizza or who got to use the car. But that night, it was just us in room 209. "Dude, this place smells like mothballs and cough syrup," Matt said as we stepped inside. He wasn't wrong. The room had 2 twin beds with heavy brown comforters, a tiny old CRT television, and a small table with 2 wobbly chairs. The carpet was a pattern of geometric shapes in dark red and green, probably chosen to hide stains. I walked over to the window and pulled the curtains aside. All I could see was a narrow view of the woods behind the hotel, the treetops swaying under a darkening sky. We killed some time flipping through the 4 channels the TV offered and making fun of the carpet. At some point, Matt dug out the small game console he'd brought, and we played some split-screen shooter until my mom knocked on the door around 9:30 and told us lights out by 11. Typical mom move. We both nodded like we'd listen. By midnight, we were still gaming. At 12:47 a.m., I remember because I glanced at the clock. Matt finally passed out mid-sentence on his bed, snoring softly, controller still in his hand. I turned off the TV, lay down, and closed my eyes. And that's when it started. I've always been a vivid dreamer. Most of my dreams were harmless. School stuff, random nonsense. Occasionally nightmares, but nothing that stuck. This was different. This was layered, real. I woke up, or at least I thought I did. I remember the exact feeling, eyes open, mind alert, but something was wrong. At first, everything in the room looked exactly the same. The shadows were where they should be. The dull blue LED on the TV glowed softly. I could hear the hum of the AC unit by the window, but my body wouldn't move. I tried lifting my arm. Nothing. My legs. Nothing. Even my tongue felt heavy, like it was glued to the roof of my mouth. I wasn't breathing heavy. I wasn't even panicked. Yet. That came when I saw her. She was in the corner of the room, standing by the desk. I didn't see her move in. She was just suddenly there, still tall, wrapped in some kind of heavy shawl or cloak that blended into the dark. Her face was mostly hidden, but her eyes, God, her eyes were so bright they felt like blades, cutting through the gloom. At first I thought I was dreaming, but I knew I wasn't. I was aware of everything. I could feel my heart pounding, feel the texture of the sheets beneath my fingers, even though I couldn't move them. She stepped forward, just one step. Her foot dragged as if it were heavy, and then another. With each step, I could feel the pressure in the room change. The air grew thick, damp. I could smell her before I could fully see her. Mildew, mold, something like wet soil and old sweat. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. As she drew closer, I saw her face, wrinkled, sunken, like wax melting over a skull. One eye larger than the other, twitching slightly. Her mouth was impossibly wide and full of crooked, decaying teeth. Her skin was pale and cracked, like dried clay. She moved to the side of my bed. I still couldn't scream. I couldn't look away. She leaned over me, so close I could hear her breathing, and raised one hand. Her fingers were long, thin, with yellowed nails that clicked as she curled them. She dragged them slowly across my chest. The sensation was ice cold. I wanted to cry. I wanted to die. Anything to end it. Her mouth began to move and I heard something. Not words, whispers. In a language I didn't know. Fast, layered, like multiple voices all coming from her throat at once. It filled my ears like water. And then, just before she climbed fully on top of me, she stopped. She stared into my eyes unmoving. Her head twitched. She tilted it like a curious dog. Then she whispered a single phrase. Something like, "You'll know the others when they come." Then she smiled. A wide, rotten smile that split her face. The lights in the room blinked out, and I woke up gasping. I sat up so fast I nearly fell off the bed. Matt was still sleeping, the controller still next to him. The room looked exactly the same. Everything was in place, but I was drenched in sweat, and my heart was going like a jackhammer. I stumbled to the bathroom, flipped on the light, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked pale, eyes bloodshot. There were no marks on my chest, but I swear I could still feel where her fingers touched me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I told Matt. He shrugged it off. "Sleep paralysis?" he said. "You've probably seen that crap on YouTube." I hadn't. I didn't even know what sleep paralysis was until after I got home and spent hours researching it. What I found was disturbing. Turns out a lot of people see her, the hag or the crone, or the old witch. Different names, same figure. But here's the thing. Most people only see her once. I've seen her 3 times since that night, never the same place. Once in college, once after moving into my first apartment, and most recently, just 6 months ago, after my son was born. She always appears when I'm stressed, tired, or stretched thin, but she never speaks. She just watches, waits. And I keep remembering what she told me that first time. You'll know the others when they come. I still don't know what she meant, but I sleep with the lights on now, every night, and I never ever stay in hotels unless I absolutely have to. Because of what happened in room 209 of the Pineview Inn? Because she's real, and once you see her, she never forgets your face. Story 5. I don't talk about this much. Truth be told, I've tried not to think about it for years. But my daughter kept insisting I write it down, said it might help others, said it might help me. So here it is. I'm not sure I believe in fate or ghosts or signs from the beyond, but after what happened that weekend in late June 2020, I can't say I don't. Back then, I was 46, married to my high school sweetheart, Neil. We lived in a quiet little town in New Mexico, Las Palomas, with our daughter Harper, who was just starting her sophomore year in college. I'd been working as a high school registrar for nearly a decade, content, not looking for much more than slow mornings and family dinners. Life was unremarkable in the best kind of way. Then I got the call. It was from my best friend Natalie, Nat to anyone who knew her. We'd been tight since middle school, bonded over stolen cigarettes behind the gym and late-night talks about everything and nothing. She'd moved out to Salton Pines, California, years ago, right after her second husband got a job with the water district. We kept in touch, birthday cards, Facebook posts, occasional phone calls. This time, though, her voice cracked when she said my name. Cassie, I don't know who else to call. She'd been diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer and was scheduled for a double mastectomy that Monday. Her husband, Derek, was stuck overseas, doing private security work, and couldn't get back for at least 2 weeks. She didn't want to go through the pre-op or recovery alone. Of course, I said yes. Neil helped me pack that night, and by dawn I was out the door. I'd always hated flying, panic attacks, sweaty palms, the whole nine, so driving was my only option. Salton Pines was just under a 13-hour drive from Las Palomas, mostly west along Interstate 10, then north through the desert. I figured if I left by 6 a.m., I could get there by nightfall. The first half of the drive was uneventful, boring even. Some desert heat, a couple roadside diners, a lot of static on the radio. Around 1 p.m., I pulled into a gas station near Blythe to stretch my legs and grab a sandwich. I remember the cashier had the kind of tired eyes that don't come from lack of sleep, just years of hard living. You heading towards Salton? He asked as he rang me up. Yeah, visiting a friend. He nodded, slow and unsure. Careful out that way. Storm season's hitting early this year. Dust rolls in fast. I thanked him, made a joke about needing a car wash anyway, and got back on the road. By 5:30 p.m., I was maybe an hour and a half out, but my eyes were getting heavy. My body knew I'd been up since before sunrise. I started slapping my cheeks, cranking the AC, even singing along to some terrible 90s pop songs. It worked for a while, until it didn't. Somewhere around 6:15, my right tire slipped off the shoulder, jolting me awake. I yanked the wheel back onto the pavement, heart hammering like I'd been chased. That was it. No more pushing. I pulled off at the next town being generous. A few closed-down gas stations, a liquor store, and one small motel with a faded neon sign blinking Salton Pines Inn. There wasn't another hotel for at least 50 miles. I figured I'd catch 5 or 6 hours of sleep and be at Natalie's before noon. I walked into the lobby, which smelled like old carpet and Lysol. A wiry man in his 60s stood behind the desk, watching a muted game show on a tiny TV. Checking in? He asked without looking at me. Yeah, just one night. He handed me a paper guest log and a room key, an actual key, not a card. Room 237, he said. End of the hall, second floor. Ice machine's busted. And don't mind the plumbing. She groans sometimes. That last line struck me as odd, like he was referring to the motel as a person. But I smiled, thanked him, and went to get my overnight bag from the car. The stairs creaked under my weight. The hallway smelled vaguely of mildew, and the walls were stained yellow like they'd absorbed decades of cigarette smoke and secrets. Room 237 was at the very end, facing an empty stretch of desert. The inside was about what I expected. Stiff bed, stained carpet, small TV on a dresser. I took a quick shower, changed into a t-shirt and yoga pants, and collapsed on the bed without pulling down the comforter. I must have passed out in seconds. I woke up to the sound of voices. At first I thought I was dreaming. Men arguing, angry. One of them had a gravelly voice, older maybe, and the other sounded younger, agitated. "I told you not to come here," the older man snapped. "You think I had a choice?" the younger one shot back. "I saw what happened. You left him there. You didn't even—" A loud bang, maybe a fist slamming against a wall. I sat up in bed, heart racing. The voices were right outside my room. I tiptoed toward the door and peeked through the peephole. Two men stood outside 239, just a few doors down. The older one wore a flannel shirt and had a cigarette dangling from his lips. The younger man was pacing, rubbing the back of his neck. Then the younger one turned toward my door, as if he felt me watching, and stared, eyes locking onto the peephole like he knew. I jumped back, and then silence. No footsteps, no door slamming, nothing. After a few moments, I crept back toward the peephole, hesitated, then looked. They were gone. I tried to go back to sleep, but my nerves were shot. Around midnight, I got up to use the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face. That's when I noticed something strange. The mirror above the sink was fogged up, like someone had taken a hot shower. But I hadn't turned on the water since my quick rinse hours earlier. I touched the glass. Warm. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable creak of the floorboards inside the room. I spun around. No one was there. The bathroom door slammed shut behind me with a force that rattled the frame. I grabbed my bag and phone and bolted out into the hallway, barefoot, shaking. I sprinted to the lobby, which was dark, empty. No one at the desk. No TV. Just a small bell. I rang it twice. Nothing. My phone had no signal, just a spinning wheel where the bar should be. I looked back toward the hallway I'd just come from. The lights were flickering. The air grew thick, heavy, like the desert heat had followed me inside. I stepped outside into the parking lot, desperate for fresh air. That's when I saw the blood, a dark smear along the back wall, near the stairwell, drops leading into the weeds. I backed away, heart thundering. A low groan came from behind me. I turned, and there he was, the younger man from earlier. Only now his shirt was soaked in blood. One hand gripped his stomach. The other reached toward me. "They left me," he whispered. "They left me here." I screamed, but the sound barely escaped my throat. I turned and ran, back into the lobby, up the stairs into my room, slamming the door shut. For hours I sat in the corner, clutching my phone, waiting for daylight. By 6 a.m., the sun had started to rise. I packed my things in under 5 minutes, threw on jeans and sneakers, and raced down to the lobby. The old man was there, reading a newspaper like nothing had happened. I slammed the key onto the counter. "What the hell happened here last night?" He looked up, blinked. "I don't know what you mean." There were two men arguing. Blood outside. Someone got shot, and I saw... I stopped myself. He stared at me, calm as anything. "There's no one else checked in last night but you." My blood ran cold. "That's not possible." He pointed to the logbook. One name. Mine. Room 237. I left without another word. I made it to Natalie's just before 10. When I told her what happened, she looked confused. "The Salton Pines Inn? Cass, that place burned down in 1997. They never rebuilt it." I thought she was joking. I pulled out my phone, looked up the address. She was right. There was a motel there once, but it had been shut down for decades. My receipt was gone. The room key too. To this day, I don't know what I experienced. Hallucination, ghost, echo from the past. Something real or not. But that blood, those voices, that look in the young man's eyes, those weren't dreams. And I never want to feel that fear again.